right, let's jump right into this deep dive. You sent this PDF over, and wow, this is intense.
Yeah.
It's definitely not like anything I've seen before. It's not a news article or some research paper. It's like a personal message.
Yeah.
Maybe something that was posted online.
Yeah.
And it just gets right into these heavy accusations.
What's really striking is how raw the emotion is. It's
Yeah.
like woven into every single sentence. And the fact that it starts with a trigger warning about sexual grooming and homemade pornography,
Yeah.
that sets a very serious tone right from the beginning. And then it names names too. Kip McKean, Elena, Jason Dimitri. It's very personal.
Yeah. It's like reading an SOS message.
Yeah.
The author accuses Kip McKean of some truly awful things, specifically sexual grooming and making homemade pornography,
Right.
with victims he allegedly coerced. And the author claims that these victims were young women from his congregation,
Yeah.
which implies an abuse of power.
Absolutely. You have to think about the position someone like Kip McKean might hold in a congregation,
Right.
That kind of influence, if it's misused, could be incredibly damaging.
And it gets even more disturbing. The author says that Kip McKean paid one woman $50,000 to keep quiet, possibly others too.
Yeah.
And then there's this allegation that he recorded these videos and threatened to release them if the women ever spoke up.
Yeah, that financial element adds a whole new level of complexity to it.
Yeah.
It makes you think, was there a cover-up?
Right.
How far did this go? And,
Yeah.
what about these threats?
Yeah. The language throughout is so strong.
Oh, it is.
The author uses words like psychopath and depraved violation, really painting this picture of intense anger and distress.
Right.
It's clear they believe these aren't just accusations, but absolute truths that need to be exposed.
It really makes you wonder what would drive someone to write something so graphic and accusatory.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the potential consequences here? Not just for Kip McKean, but for everyone named, including the author.
Yeah, it's not just about Kip McKean, though.
Yeah.
The author also goes after Elena, possibly his wife, accusing her of being complicit in all this, and maybe even profiting from the hush money.
Yeah, the author claims that Elena knew about Kip McKean sexually harassing another woman in the past,
Wow.
and she didn't say anything. They even suggest that Jason Dimitri might have seen those videos.
That's a lot to take in. It's a web of accusations, and each one leads to a deeper, more disturbing question.
Yeah, it really is. You can feel the desperation in that last paragraph.
Yeah.
They call it a wake-up call and warn about the destruction of countless innocent souls if Kip McKean isn't stopped.
It's like they're begging for someone, anyone, to step in and do something.
They directly challenge Elena and Jason to sound the alarm, like they have a responsibility to act here.
So we have this incredibly disturbing document, a single voice making these serious allegations. What do you make of all of this? What could possibly motivate someone to take such a drastic step?
Yeah, it really is a chilling situation. A single voice making these claims, convinced they're exposing this huge, terrible truth. But we have to be careful here. We're looking at allegations right now, not proven facts.
Exactly. And it's easy to get caught up in all the emotion. But we have to stay focused and look at this critically. Let's break down these accusations against Kip McKean and see what we can find.
Okay, so one of the most serious allegations is this term that the author uses over and over, sexual grooming. It describes a process of manipulation where someone, often in a position of power, builds a relationship with a victim to exploit them sexually.
It's really insidious. Like, it's not just one act of abuse, it's this calculated strategy that preys on trust and vulnerability.
Right, exactly. And the author is suggesting that Kip McKean used his position within this congregation to target these young women. Think about the influence he might have had over them. It's a lot of potential for coercion and manipulation.
And then you add in the financial side of things. The author claims that Kip McKean used money to silence at least one woman, maybe more. That $50,000 payout, that's a very specific detail.
Yeah, it does add another layer to it. Did he use money to cover up his actions? Were there other victims who were pressured into silence? And what about Elena? What role did she play in all of this?
The author accuses her of knowing about it, even potentially benefiting from the alleged hush money. It makes you question what she knew and when.
Yeah, for sure. And, if we zoom out a little bit, it makes you wonder if this was a one-time thing or part of a larger pattern of behavior. That's something we just don't know from this document, but it's a question worth asking.
And then there's the most disturbing part of all, the graphic descriptions of this alleged homemade porn. The author claims that Kip McKean recorded these videos without consent and then used them as a way to control and blackmail the women.
The author goes into a lot of detail, and it's really unsettling. And the language they use to describe those alleged videos is just filled with anger and disgust. You can tell they believe that these women were deeply hurt, violated by someone they trusted.
It's hard to read those parts without having a strong reaction. But it's so important to remember, we're dealing with allegations, not confirmed facts. We don't know if these videos exist or if anyone else has seen them.
Right, that's key. We can't jump to conclusions no matter how disturbing these allegations are. But we also can't ignore the potential impact this could be having on everyone involved. Think about the fear and uncertainty in that congregation, the potential damage to reputations, even if these accusations turn out to be false.
It really shows the power of words, both for good and bad. The author clearly believes they're telling the truth, trying to protect others from abuse. But there's always the chance of unintended consequences, of causing even more pain, even with good intentions.
It's a fine line, isn't it? And as we keep digging into this, we need to keep both of those possibilities in mind, the potential for truth and the potential for damage.
Right? So we're starting to see this pattern emerge, this whole web of interconnected accusations, each one more serious than the last. But the biggest question is still out there. What's the truth behind all of this?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And this document alone doesn't give us the answer. But it does make you think about some really interesting psychological stuff, about motivation and what happens in these situations of abuse.
Yeah, like the author calls out Elena and Jason Dimitri specifically, demanding that they sound the alarm and protect the congregation from Kip McKean. What do you think is going on there?
It seems like the author believes Elena and Jason have some kind of moral obligation to do something, that they're complicit by not speaking up, almost like putting the responsibility for getting justice on their shoulders.
That makes you wonder about their relationship with Elena and Jason. Were they close? Did they feel betrayed by them not doing anything?
It's possible. Yeah, and it makes you think about how complicated it is to be a whistleblower. It's not just about revealing the truth, it's also about the potential backlash, the possibility of being ostracized or not believed. The author is taking a huge risk by putting this out there.
Absolutely, they're not holding back at all. There's a part where they describe Kip McKean bragging about how good he is at manipulating people, even comparing himself to a cult leader.
Oh, wow, that's pretty chilling. It suggests a real lack of empathy and this arrogance that, if it's true, it's really disturbing. It makes you think about someone who enjoys controlling and using other people.
Yeah, which is a classic sign of an abuser, right?
Yeah.
Using charisma and charm and this fake sense of intimacy to gain the trust of victims. It's a good reminder that abuse can happen anywhere, even in places that seem safe and trustworthy.
Right, absolutely. And this deep dive is a good reminder to stay vigilant, to be aware of the warning signs of abuse, and to speak up if something feels wrong.
There's a lot here to unpack, and we've only just scratched the surface. But I think we can see how complicated this whole thing is. We have this one source, a voice that's clearly very passionate and making some serious accusations. But there's no hard evidence to back up those claims.
Right, and that's where it gets tricky. How do you weigh the severity of these allegations against the lack of proof from other sources? How do we deal with this kind of sensitive information responsibly without making judgments too quickly?
We've spent a lot of time with this document, really diving into the accusations and trying to understand the author's motivations. But, where does that leave us? What really stands out to you after going through all of this?
It's like we're looking through a tiny crack into this huge storm.
Yeah.
We see these glimpses of intense emotions, hear all these accusations flying around, but the full picture is still hidden. We have this one voice speaking so strongly, but nothing else to confirm or deny what they're saying.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. You want to take these accusations seriously. The subject matter is really sensitive. But we also have to be careful about jumping to conclusions based on just one person's account.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between acknowledging the potential for harm and being fair. We can't just assume guilt because someone makes an accusation. We have to remember that everyone is innocent until proven guilty.
That's an important point. And it makes you think about a bigger issue. How do we deal with this type of information responsibly? Especially now, when accusations can spread so quickly online, often without any real evidence or fact-checking.
Yeah, it's more important than ever to be really careful about the information we consume. We need to be critical about what we're reading and hearing, especially when it comes to these emotionally charged allegations. It's all about asking questions, looking for different perspectives, and being wary of information that's sensationalized or biased.
So let's say someone comes to you with a document just like this one, full of disturbing accusations, but no proof from any other source. What advice would you give them?
I would tell them to think about what could happen to everyone involved, What impact do these accusations have on the accused, the accuser, and even the whole community? Words are powerful, and once they're out there, it can be really hard to undo any damage that's been done.
That's a really powerful thought. It's not just about getting justice or exposing something bad. It's also about understanding that our actions can have consequences and that we need to share information responsibly.
And it's also about being aware of our own biases. We all come to these situations with our own perspectives and experiences that can shape how we see things. We have to try to be aware of those influences and approach the information as objectively as possible.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening, hasn't it? It just shows that even though we live in a world where information is everywhere, finding the truth can be really difficult.
Yeah, and it really highlights how complicated people are. We're capable of great things and terrible things, and sometimes it can be hard to tell who's the victim and who's the one causing harm, what's true and what's not.
So after all this, what's the most important thing you want our listener to take away from this?
Think critically, be careful about the information you come across, and consider the potential consequences for everyone involved. We have a responsibility to seek justice, but we also need to protect those who are innocent and avoid causing any further harm.
Well said. It's been a fascinating deep dive, and at times a bit unsettling into a very complex situation. Thank you for guiding us through all of this and for sharing your insights.
It was my pleasure. And remember, even though this specific deep dive is over, the conversation doesn't have to stop here. There's always more to explore, more to learn, and more to discuss.
That's a great point. This case, with all its unanswered questions and different viewpoints, is sure to generate more debate and investigation. We encourage you to keep researching, keep asking questions, and come to your own conclusions based on a balanced understanding of all the available information.
And if this deep dive has raised any concerns for you personally, please remember that there are resources available to help. Don't hesitate to reach out to a trusted friend, family member, or professional for support.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.